So AEW Blood and Guys is back. Who wrote Guys? So AEW Blood and Guts is back, which is always a ridiculous thing to say because it sounds absolutely disgusting. It's one of the reasons I like AEW. If they advertise something as Blood and Guts, you can tune in and you'll get Blood and Guts. We're not literally here, but if you like the red stuff, good grief, we got buckets of the stuff. But it did actually make for a very entertaining Dynamite, which makes me sound like an absolute crazy person. Hello, welcome to Ups and Downs, the only wrestling review show you need. I have watched All Elite Wrestling's Dynamite Blood and Guts special extravaganza whoopsie-doo, and I'm going to tell you the good bits and the bad bits, and it all gets ups and downs. And if you disagree with me, that's great, because we can all have a big hug when we meet at a show in the future. These are just random words, none of this makes sense. Let's up those downs. Also, thank you very much to the person that bought this sign. That is always the coolest thing ever, so I bow down to you, and it does make me feel warm and fuzzy in my tum-tum. And of course, you get an up when, of course, we kicked off with the women's Blood and Guts match, because if you are going to have two Blood and Guts matches, one has to go at the end, and one has to go at the beginning. Now, personally, and this goes for War Games too over in WWE, I just think every year you should look at the stories and go, this year's it's the women, next year it can be the men's, or you can do two women's back-to-back, it doesn't matter. Just means you can come up with spots that are going to hit harder because 2 hours later, more people don't need to go out there and come up with new spots. That also doesn't matter in terms of what we did do on this evening because once again, flubbed me sideways, it was just naff. We also have Mercedes Moné, Marina Shafir, Megan Bayne in the Triangle of Madness taking on Willow Nightingale, Toni Storm, Chris Statlander, Jamie Hayter, Harley Cameron, and Mira Sirakara. And basically, once again, I can only repeat myself here, it was totally mad. And the amount of blood. Like the first people out was Willow Nightingale and Sky Blue. In about 8 seconds, Sky Blue was bleeding, so I suppose you could call her Sky Red. That makes me the stupidest person ever. And everybody came out with weapons, and then we had a barbed wire bat almost instantly, and Willow came out with a trash can. I was like, Wills, you've lost this game. Julia Hart was in after that as well, which worked for the Triangle of Madness and how much they love hypotenuse. And when Harley Cameron joined in, she just got a chair and threw it into somebody's face, and the next person was Tekla. So I was like, man, everybody wants to be part of the Triangle of Madness, because they've got their ship together. Some of the belt whips after this as well. You could hear in Australia they were so loud. And when Jamie Hayter walked out, I think she had learned, because she had a bag of tacks, and she was just hitting people with the bag, and of course they were going to be used, and of course it was going to be totally disgusting. Chris Statlander came out with a pool cue, so maybe she'd been playing. Somebody went, Chris, you've got to go. And I really enjoyed Mercedes' entrance, because all of a sudden all of her belts were set up at ringside on a table. But at one point, she threw some of these championships to her team and they all used them as weapons. And I was like, well, that's why she's been doing it. That's why she wanted to beat the record. So down the line, she could essentially commit a crime. She also hit Chris Statlander with a tornado DDT. And surprise, surprise, Chris was then bleeding. And when Mira Sirakara eventually ran in, she also had, I don't know if there's another barbed wire bat or the same barbed wire bat, but it meant people were now being hit with barbed wire. Now, do not forget, the law of averages tells us that somewhere on this planet, somebody decided on this Wednesday night, hi, I'm going to watch wrestling for the first time, and this is what they saw. And if that is you, please drop me a comment below, because one of two things is going to happen. Either one, you're obsessed with sports entertainment for the rest of your life, or you've been like, it's absolutely disgusting. Marina Shafir may have had the best walk to the ring, because when she got there, she grabbed a bloody Chris Statlander and started dragging her around the place, which was like a horror movie. And about 2 minutes after this, we had a bed of nails. Marina grabbed Chris and threw her into it. And Statlander sold that like she was dead. I tell you, whatever we've been doing with Marina over the last 12 months or even 2 years has worked so well because when she did arrive, you're like, oh my gosh, she's going to totally flub everybody out. Toni Storm walked out there like a cartoon because she was using jewelry and champagne buckets, and her and Mercedes went at it when Annie was like blasting her with titles. And that was a good wink, wink, nudge, nudge as well because of course they had their big match All In, but you just know they're going to have to do a round 2 eventually. Storm then remembered that she enjoys sticking her fists in shards of glass, so she was punching people, and you'll be shocked to hear that brought about more blood. When Sky Blue got powerbombed through a table, the damn thing didn't break, but Mercedes Moné didn't care, because she started then hitting people with her finishing maneuvers. I think one of my favourite personal bits was a bit of a twist when it came to Goofy Wrestling for Life, because Harley saw this. She got Mini Monet out, Mercedes was like, give me that thing, and she threw it away, but it was all part of the plan because Harley had brass knucks on and she smacked Mercedes right in the face. Also, the fans were so damn mad that the puppet had been, chucked to the side, they actually didn't realise that Harley had a weapon on her fist. So you can say whatever you want, but that puppet is over. And this is when the bad guys decided they didn't care about the rules, and they basically stole the key from the referee to open a cage. And that's when Chris Statlander and Mercedes went crashing through tables. When you started to look at this and go, wait a minute, I think the heels do have a plan. They are trying to trap the babyface on the outside, probably because they want to create carnage within. Before that, though, Toni Storm was going to do a hip attack where she had a mirror thrown into her face, and you literally saw all the glass spill everywhere. And this is when Marina started to walk through that because she's totally insane. She also then went totally unhinged because you saw Mira Shirakara, who's basically dead on the floor. And not only did she apply every single submission she could think of, but the rest of the bad guys, who had trapped everybody else on the outside, just started to smack her with weapons as they held Toni Storm back. So what else was Toni meant to do? It's like seeing your best friend, your lover, your dad, your mom, your Auntie Jane get totally murdered. You can't stand there and just take it. So she shouted, I give up, I surrender, meaning the heels had won the match. And of course, they just continue to cause violence because they're all nuts. Now, I do find we kind of over-rely on that angle when we get to Blood and Guts, but to be fair, this worked very well. And Bryan Danielson on commentary, as always, was so damn good. He was like, she had to give up to protect the one that she loves. Excuse me, I may be crying. So the whole thing was just totally mad as well, and we will absolutely benefit from this as long as we do make sure we platform it in the right way. But I can't see why we wouldn't do. You have to give it an up, and let's not forget, it was the first ever women's Blood and Gut match, and they have raised the bar so damn high, which actually scares me, because I presume we'll get one in 2026, and like the men, they will just find different ways to kill each other. But huge round of applause. You have to appreciate the effort. You enjoy the darker side of pro wrestling, I suppose. You have to watch this. They did not let you down. I just hope this morning they are as okay as they can be. Turned out the Don Callis family had decided, well, this creates a wonderful distraction for us, because we cut backstage, and they too were trying to kill the Jurassic Express. They were then like cats that bring birds to your back door. They dragged Jack Berry to the Young Bucks' locker room as if to say, ha ha, look what we done. Man Nick then walked out with a Carter, and Josh Alexander was all like, this is what happens that you mess with the family. And Kenny Omega is going to be on the show next week. And essentially the Young Bucks were told, you better make a decision because we're going to try and kill Ken. And my guess would be they do not join the Don Callis family. And they may not reunite with Omega on that show, but we will continue the tease. But either way, this was a bit of a mugging. Can you put a 1 on the crime counter? I mean, I guess you can. When we have something very interesting to talk about, because it was Hangman Adam Page versus Powerhouse Will Hobbs in a Falls Count Anywhere match. If you walked into this room right now and said, oh, hi, Simon, I think this was the best match on the card, even with 2 Blood and Guts matches. I mean, yeah, I kind of see where you're coming from. It was very good. I think they knew they had to go crazy to begin with, so everybody was trying to expose Tina the Turnbuckle to use that steal. When we saw, oh no, after the attack last week, Hangman had tape around his chest region because I presume he had broken ribs. This makes all the sense in the world. If you do indeed wrap some fabric around you, you've essentially created a shield. But Powerhouse Hobbs had figured this out, and he removed the tape, and I was like, oh, well, now, cowboy, you were totally screwed. This is why the match was so damn good, though, because we gave so much to Powerhouse. Like, even when Hangman did a dive and put 1 on the counter, Hobbs was just grabbing him, throwing him around the place. I think he threw him into Simba the Steel Steps. He definitely threw him into Barry Barricade. And at one point, he was going to chuck him into Alan the announce table. But this back body drop that Page gave to William, oh my God, you need to see it. I mean, how he got so much height, I don't know, but he also landed right on his ass. I hope he is okay. But in terms of a visual where you're like, well, of course that was gonna mug him off. Yeah, that was it. Hangman was then moonsaulting off Barry Barricade, which was a bit unfair to Barry when we were using trash cans and tables. And this is when we can get into a very interesting conversation, because some people are like, oh man, we saw too much garbage wrestling on this show. But you can't have a regular match in between 2 Blood and Guts. You would have killed the crowd. And here, even though the audience was pretty exhausted from that first match, this just G'd them up again. And for the 2.5 hours, well, they never actually quieted down. They eventually fought into these fans too, and they were going nuts. Well, yes, we basically went back to WWE in 1999, because Hangman knocked Powerhouse Will Hobbs, who is gigantic, by the way, off this balcony thingamajig. He landed into, what, the electrical wiring? I don't know what you'd call it, but the big box-like structure. It did the whole zzz, zzz, zzz thing. There was a giant explosion, and Hangman pinned him for the 1, 2, 3. Now, I have zoomed through that way too fast, but we have a lot to cover. But this was just such a good carnage, crazy, absolutely nuts match, which again, kind of matched what we were doing throughout the show as well. And I don't think it hurt Powerhouse Hobbs to lose here, because he just kind of told you he can be an absolute monster. But we need to jump on that as well. I actually think with the right push in 2026, you could even make him the champ. Of course, Shibata and Samoa Joe tried to jump him afterwards when they got back in the ring. They were like, lower the cage. And it did start coming down. So who in the AEW production crew is helping Samoa Joe and the opportunities? Because otherwise, why would this happen? Now, thankfully, this is when Hook and Eddie Kingston ran out to make the save, and Joe and Shibata ran off because they are a couple of cowards, when Hangman was like, Samoa Joe, if you wanted me in a cage, you only had to ask. So at Full Gear, it's going to be you and me in a cage. And that was a little bit corny, but also very much pro wrestling. But you can easily justify this. They've already had one match. Wrestling kind of tells you that if we are going to get another one, and in the OG, it was a pretty clean finish, you have to do something different, you have to do something crazy. And as the commentator said as well, to sell this thing, Hangman Adam Page in a cage, which does rhyme, so it must be true, is like an unhinged gentleman, which is absolutely the case. I don't think they're going to get to the levels that him and Swerve did, although please don't do that, because I can't handle it. But the match was good, the follow-up was good. It's Samoa Joe, man, so there's no way it can be bad. I'm giving it an up. At the very least, it got me pumped for the pay-per-view, which is my brand new saying. That's absolutely the point. Went from nowhere, Tony Schiavone was having a chat with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, although we were in old school wrestling countries, this made all the sense in the world. And man, I always like Ricky Steamboat. Like, he's obviously done stuff for WWE, and he's done stuff for AEW, but he just always understands what he needs to do, I suppose. He just comes across like a bit of a legend, which is exactly what he is. Of course, he was always going to be interrupted by somebody, and it was FTR, which kind of worked because they were part of Ricky Steamboat's retirement match, as he tried to talk about. When Stokely Hathaway was like, well, you don't know me, and don't get me confused with Denzel Washington. Also, have you heard from Macho Man recently? Because I haven't seen him on TikTok. Now, maybe this one went over my bald head. That would be perfectly fine. But that just felt a bit mean. I was like, Macho Man passed away in 2011. I think we can just leave him alone. This is when Cash and Dax talked about the fact, well, you must like us, Ricky, because again, we were part of your big finale. When Dax was also like around about 15 years ago, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat actually trained me. And do you know what I learned? Absolutely nothing. I don't know whose decision it was to turn these guys heel, but especially with Stokely Hathaway, they are so good, because you know they can go in the ring, but when they do this kind of stuff, well, they're absolute assholes. Harwood then even pie-faced him and told him to leave the ring. And this is why Ricky is so good. He just has a way about him, because listen, if it was back in the day, I would have whooped your butts, but I'm almost 73 years old. I'm going to be smart here, and I'm going to leave the ring. Now, other people could have done that. You'd be like, oh man, what a coward. Not the Dragon Man. He's just like number one when it comes to respect. Of course, FTR then jumped him. And again, he had just told you he's almost 73. It's like, this is absolutely disgusting. And just as they were going to give him the power driver, out came Brodido. They beat these idiots up. Because who are they going to fight at the pay-per-view? Well, it's FTR versus Brodido, Bandido, Bambadalibo. We also made sure that Ricky got a few chops in there, and that popped the crowd because of course it did when Stokely Hathaway saved his boys. So once again, given the location of Blood and Guts, it was just a nice wink, wink, nudge, nudge to remind you of the past and get some extra heat on FTR. Though it did make me laugh because Brody King and Bandido must have been watching this segment going, I'm sure it's going to be okay. And then when FTR did attack, they were like, damn it, we better go. So much like last week, it's just over-the-top heel fun with the babyfaces making the save. And I actually think at the pay-per-view, we'll probably do the title change, but that will be perfectly fine. I just like how long we're taking here, and there is a brand new angle every 7 days. That's all you need. I'm giving it up. Thought it was very effective. When it was men's bag time, Blood and Guts, and yes, it was Darby Allin, Brock Briscoe, Kyle O'Reilly, Roderick Strong, and Orange Cassidy taking on the Death Riders. Copy and paste what I said earlier. Everybody walked out there and thought to themselves, well, I guess we could go for death. I am going to jump forward here because I think we need to talk about this the most. But at one point, Pac and Darby Allin fought up to the big entranceway. They climbed up there and Pac gave Darby a press slam off that great height through a table, and the table was on fire. Now, we'll talk about that later as well. But this is one of the craziest spots I have seen in ages, and you should watch that clip. It's like 10 seconds long, and it's like dodgeball. It's layered. Every single time you will see something that's even more insane than the last time you watched it. I don't understand how he did this. And there was fire too. Darby Allin is totally insane. You can't pretend it wasn't impressive though, and actually the whole thing did kick off with Darby Allin and Wheeler Yuta. And yes, Darby Allin had the skateboard with tacks in it, so he was smacking people with that. The question is, where the flub did he buy it, or did he make it himself? Orange Cassidy then joined in and he was stabbing people, or stabbing Wheeler Yuta. There was so much stabbing during this match, to the point I was like, did they plan this? Did they all sit down and go punch, punch, kick, slam, stab, stab, stab? I mean, I guess they must have done. Daniel Garcia then joined in and Mark Briscoe was meant to follow when we did cut to the back because, surprise, surprise, somebody had beaten up Marky Mark, and I presume this was Carl Fletcher. And this is when we led into the story of, oh no, what are we going to do? The baby faces are now totally screwed. Roderick Strong didn't care. He was like, oh, go. Let's not worry that somebody got beaten up. And at this point, I was like, man, we have to have Mark Briscoe win here if he is going to be portrayed as a bit of a chump again. But then, surprise, surprise, give it 5 minutes. Who walked out to join his team? It was flipping Mark Briscoe. Before that, though, Kyle O'Reilly joined in the fray and he was doing suplexes. I was shouting at my TV, "You're meant to bring a weapon, Carl, you idiot. Don't just do moves." When Claudio Castagnoli was just picking people up and throwing them into the cage like they were children, and he did this big swing when he also had Orange Cassidy on his back. Now, I know a lot of people say this, myself included, but no matter how underrated Claudio is, he's even more underrated. We need to start shouting his praises more. He's been doing this, 20 years, and I've never seen him have a bad match. He genuinely is amazing. Jon Moxley then came out and he had a fork, which meant we got more stabbing. And you're probably now asking, Simon, why are you laughing about fork stabs? I'm not, I just don't know what else to do. We also saw that he's clearly been training Daniel Garcia in the right way, because he gave him the fork and he didn't sit down, have a nice pasta dish. He took it and he continued to stab. People were then going into glass as well, because of course they were, when you cut to Kyle O'Reilly, who was bleeding so much I almost didn't recognize him. Well, yes, that's when Mark Briscoe did walk out. But given that the cage had been locked because the match had started properly, he had to have some bolt cutters, so he essentially broke in. He then hurled some chairs into people's faces so violently, and you often hear fans on the internet go, man, I'm so desensitized to this stuff. Not me. When he took that steel and brained someone, I was like, man, I need to go lay down. This all happened on top of a cage as well, because of course Mark and Wheeler Yuta had gone up there, and the way they got the weapons to the top of the thing is they created like, I can't remember what you call it now, like a carina or something, but they created a rope pulley system so Mark Briscoe could get the chairs to the top. I was like, well, it's pretty inventive. I don't think I've seen that before. We then got a J driller on top of the damn thing, because of course we did. Just in case you didn't think this had enough madness, Gabe Kidd finally returned. I was like, this should be a much bigger deal than we're making it. The last time we saw him, he essentially was killed by Darby Allin, but it turns out he was just buried in a hole, and of course he went after Darby. And this is when we go back to that fire table. Guess who set it aflame? That's right, it was Gabe Kidd. He'd also been watching wrestling for the late 90s because he had a taser and tasered poor Darby. So in that 5-minute period, I think Darby Allin went through more damage than anybody has in the history of this sport. From here, it was just total carnage and just horrible stuff. You're like, oh man, would you please leave each other alone? But the last 5 minutes were very good, especially because it essentially came down to Jon Moxley and Kyle O'Reilly, which has been the story over the last 2 weeks. Now, John was there trying to murder people, but eventually Kyle was able to duck and dodge, and he started to apply every single submission move he could think of to Jon Moxley, who was totally alone. And as we have learned ever since All In, as soon as Moxley's in any kind of trouble or he's in any kind of submission move, he kind of panics and he does tap out, and that's what happened here. And I looked around like, well, who had that on their bingo card? Kyle O'Reilly wins the match against Jon Moxley. I thought that was a damn good pull, and we should absolutely use this going forward. So that genuinely took me by surprise, which is no bad thing. But again, nobody properly lost here because they'd all been murdered. And while you can say, well, of course this was going to happen because the bad guys won the first one, so the good guys have to win the second one, sometimes it's all right to do the simple stuff. Let's not avoid what else we did here, because the whole show was sponsored by Dr. Robotnik and Chaos. I just think it's so damn super impressive what everybody brought to us on this night. And the show was 2.5 hours, and we've talked about it before. Sometimes AEW does that Dynamite Collision 3-hour block, and it just feels too long. This didn't. And even though the Blood and Guts matches do go a long-ass time, I was never once bored, mostly because I was hiding behind my sofa going, stop, please would you stop. But I am going to give the men's bag an up, and of course overall it gets an up. There was nothing bad on this show. Like, if we look at it bit by bit, or what AEW was trying to execute here, they delivered every single time. I thought it was damn good. And now I probably need to go and vomit, or at least put some blood back into my body, just because I just saw so much blood going the other way. It's the weirdest thing I've said for a while. So if you were on the fence, yes, go and check it out. But just be warned, because a lot of it does get kind of fruity here and there. And while you are looking around, please do like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Let me know what you thought about Blood and Guts in the comments below. Also, you can click the video on the screen, which is Ups and Downs for Montague Night Raw. Otherwise, we now relax. If you are into the reviews, I will see you Saturday as we do Up and Down, Smack It Down. Otherwise, have a terrific Thursday. See you then.